Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe, kind of picking up where I left off. Apologize for the empty week. Life kicked in. What can I say? Apocrypha, the second part of that two-parter, Piper Maru, and then the Apocrypha. Episode 16 is where we're at today. Golly, time flies. Before you know it, season 3 is going to be over and we'll be into season 4. This episode drops February 16th, 1996 for the first time. Kim Manners on again as director and Chris Carter, Frank Spotnitz writing. Apocrypha. First again, apologize for missing the week. Life just kicked in and, not a lot you can do, right? So anyways, also, you'll notice a link down below. First one out top, the first link. We just got here at Body Bags. You know, we do this collaborative effort. We're on episode 7 now, where most of us, if not all of us, if we can get together, we'll have a long form conversation about any number of topics. Last night or Friday night was the so this should drop, I'm hoping. Well, actually, this is Wednesday, so last Friday we got together, but it's up, the link down below. Talk about physical media. And our sort of template is sort of a discussion-based top 5 sort of deal. So I ran with Anchor Bay, and the others ran with their own companies. And so we had a top 5 out of those companies. And really a lot of talk just about our love of physical media. Why it's so important, why it matters. So anyways, that show, it's about 3 hours and 30 minutes, I think. They don't usually go quite that long, but I don't know. It was a good night. So if you're interested in that, that's of course part of Body Bags and what we do over there. But here, my channel, here in particular, the X-Files. The Apocrypha, good place to start there is with the title. I think of Apocrypha, the term, the word, I think in a biblical sense. I think, the Apocrypha are those non-canonized books, those books that didn't make it into the Bible for whatever reason. And there were the good ones that were considered extremely edifying, and those that weren't, like anything in life, right? And even those that were considered well edifying, some, they're called the Apocrypha for a reason. They didn't get in. Funny, even though Jude cites Enoch in the text, Enoch, of course, never gets in. So the Apocrypha, in terms of the early church fathers, would have considered it useful in terms of giving us a better view of the scripture in its totality from creation on, right? So in that sense, this episode in particular, if you listen to the commentary, if you just watch, think about it, it really does set the stage early on for the film Fight the Future that will come between 5 and 6, seasons 5 and 6. You're introduced to really the black oil in a major way, gets talked about, as well as an interesting meeting of the syndicate, which, many of which, if not all, will be in the movie Fight the Future, which is pretty amazing considering that this is season 3 and we're still talking, not till between season 5 and 6 where that film. Now, obviously, we always start making movies earlier than that, but so it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast not too long ago, and the focus was on Enoch. The first 2 sections of Enoch, and the guy that was on the podcast was arguing not just for the very, very early dating, which many would say easily predates predates Christ, but more importantly, he argued for that it's actually he believes it is authored by Enoch, and the reason I mention that is because he refers to the first 2 sections in Enoch, Watchers and Parables, as he calls it the Rosetta Stone of Scripture. Now, the Rosetta Stone may be familiar to you. That is the discovery that opened up the view of how we read hieroglyphics. And so his point is, he believes the first two pieces of that book, Enoch, are so important that they really do give us a huge view into both creation and just the prophecies of the Messiah and whatnot, and just a lot of things, right? So the point is there's a lot in the word Apocrypha. And so this episode really opens up our mind, our view to what is coming down the pike eventually in terms of the mythology, the ark, right? So it's pretty important. It's pretty important. So, this, I'm not going to go through the whole entire show. This is what happens when you lose a week, right? In fact, I just watched it again today just to kind of get it fresh in my head. And, of course, it leaves right off of Piper Maru, and you've got, Skinner. Skinner's in the hospital, and his conversation with Scully continues, right? And you have some really nice pieces. Mulder and Krycek get back. They're involved in a car accident very early on, in which Mulder will end up in the hospital. The alien, or the black oil that has infected Krycek, will deal with the situation there on the ground in terms of the accident. It's seeking to deliver that digital tape back to the smoking man as to ascertain the whereabouts of the UFO, because that's where it wants to get back to, is the UFO. There's a great flashback at the beginning involving a young version of the Smoking Man and young Bill Mulder, which is great. It's actually in black and white. But if you watch the entire episode in black and white, it's pretty wild, man. Especially the end, when Krycek, the black oiled Krycek, is trapped in this silo, and just, the black oil just comes gushing out of his orifices, I guess, and making its way into the UFO. It's just seeing that whole thing play out in black and white is quite, aesthetically, it's quite amazing, actually. It's really cool. And I've noticed that more and more with black and white, like with Walking Dead, which I'm doing a series on, just started season 2. I've been trying my best to watch all of that in black and white, and that, since it was shot in 16 millimeter, that grittiness comes through even more in the black and white, and it is fantastic. And so, you've got an interesting conversation once Mulder's out of the hospital. I believe it's after that he'll end up having a conversation with the well manicured man. This leads to some interesting tidbits of knowledge. Of course, we will see this conversation picked up again. Well, I'm not sure if it'll be picked up again between here and the film Fight the Future, but I do believe it's those two that have another conversation before the well-manicured man gets back in the car and the car blows up and Fight the Future. I really so cannot wait to get through these 5 seasons and review that film as a special addition to this. I think having covered the 5 seasons is going to be pretty wild to look at that again with that in mind. The lone gunmen are in this. They help Mulder early on ascertain or at least what they think is the location of the digital tape, which is in a locker, which, if you remember, well, in the beginning of this episode, or somewhere in this episode, the gunmen are in this really interesting conversation about technology and crime technology, and at the same time they're talking about this, which I think Chris Carter said it was a little too much money to utilize some of these ideas. So as they're talking about the ideas, Mulder is simply using a pencil and that's where he figures out the phone number that links him to the syndicate and his conversation with the well-manicured man. And so, you kind of got that moment, which is so cool. One of the things I wanted to talk about too, well, there's this, we find out that the black oil ultimately escaped that sub, that you get that really cool flashback in Piper Maru. That oil had escaped into the sea, which is kind of an interesting concept of where does it go from there or whatnot, right? Well, we know the events of Piper Maru, how that all works out. But I wanted to also mention just looking at my notes, John Bartley, the cinematographer, who did how many? I know I wrote it down here. 72 episodes from seasons 1 through 3 as a cinematographer. I just was thinking about him, his ability. The cinematography here in Apocrypha is really quite amazing, but he has an ability of capturing people's faces. The close-ups on Mulder and Scully when we're talking, and there's a lot to be said about David Boyd as well, the cinematographer. 9 episodes early, first 2 seasons of The Walking Dead. His ability to get those close framing shots of people, and I think of the scene with Rick and Merle up on the roof, is just an absolute, and even in black and white is so much better, but his ability to get those close-ups on human expression and faces, and as they're talking, showing emotion, is quite amazing. And even though he only did 9 episodes and some really important ones in the beginning, I was surprised to find out that he actually, how many did we say, 13, he directed 13 episodes of The Walking Dead from seasons 2 to 10, which is interesting, that being David Boyd again. But just the work of the cinematographers and what we've seen from Bartley is just amazing. His work and use of the camera, the flashback, or the sort of flashback into that conversation between the young cigarette smoking man and young Bill Mulder, is with a survivor of the sub that you get the flashback from in Piper Maru, which is really kind of cool just to see a young cigarette smoking man, putting those cigarettes in as a young man. Come find out, the guy who plays the cigarette smoking man actually in real life hates smoking. Just absolutely hates the idea of cigarettes. And so the process of actually getting him to handle these things is really quite amazing, because, the dude smokes him down like, man, I mean, you would just assume he smoked in real life, but man, it's anything but, right? Just seeing there's something, we find out the shooter of Skinner is the one who has killed Melissa, which serves as good closure. By the end of the episode, you have a really nice cemetery scene with Mulder and Scully. Again, in black and white, just looks phenomenal, where they share sort of some closure to some of this. But it's the beginning, it's the closing of some, but it's the opening of other new ventures into where this show is headed. And I think Chris is right. Who am I to argue with a director, right? In his own creative vision, or, producer as his and writer. But this is a really important episode in terms of everything from here forward, which is really important. So I think I'll just wrap it up there. Some really good stuff in here in this episode, and I didn't meant to look ahead to see what's next. I'm sure it's a Monster of the Week episode, and quite frankly, I'm just glad to get out of this and back on track every week. Skipping a week is not easy, especially when you're in the midst of a 2-part episode. But we can put the Apocrypha behind us and move on with a smile on our face as season 3 continues on. So as always, donning my Bills gear today, because I don't think they're doing well today. I think they're losing to the Cardinals last time I checked. But anyways, that never stops us, man, for ending these things off with Go Bills.
This is not a dream. Not a dream. We might be useful to you.